Welcome to Zeros and Ones, podcast about philosophy, ancient wisdom, and the meaning of life. Here is your host, Becca Thompson.
Becca Chickenen. I would love to grab your attention if you're curious about our financial systems. So there is a phrase, right? Follow the money. So we are 1 week away from an election for essentially the most powerful person on the planet. But of course, if you're modestly cynical as I am, I know there are more powerful people. We don't know their names. But they're out there. But at any rate, so follow the money. So not only do I teach math, and I could teach you all about exponential growth and decay and market share, and I have an MBA with an emphasis in finance. And I've done mostly just modeling in financial markets and projections. Sadly, I've never been wrong. And I say sadly because sometimes the projections aren't that happy. And I, once upon a time, was a currency trader. I would like to explain a little bit of what's going on so you can understand what is at stake in our election, the way I see it, okay? And I don't want to get into politics because politics is politics, but actually at the end of the day, there are things that are going on. So let's think about this. How does McDonald's sell you a Happy Meal, right? How do they sell you a Big Mac? It's some of the evidence. They sell you a Big Mac possibly from a Happy Meal through your kids, right? How do they sell the Happy Meal to your kids? Well, we've got the Ronald McDonald Gang. And if you're Gen X, you know them very well. We've got the Hamburglar, you know. Why can't I can visualize them all. It's like crazy to me. Who's the like purple guy with the shake? And of course, Ronald McDonald. The non-creepy clown. So we're selling you a food through very simple comic booky messaging, oftentimes to children, with which to bait you into wanting to buy it, right? And this is not a scourge on McDonald's. I try not to eat it because I know it's not good for me. And then that's another thing too. So then McDonald's is filled with salts and oils, and grade D beef, sold you mostly by Cargill, actually, if you know that Minnesota company. And it gets you hooked because of the salt, which is a whole different thing. Okay, I'm using that as an example to talk about our monetary systems and our politics. So the end game of McDonald's is sales, just period, right? If you watch the movie, The Founder with Michael Keaton, it was just a really great, he wasn't the McDonald's brother, right? Ray Kroc, but he was the one who figured out how to sell it, how to sell it in a franchise way. He was the marketing man, and he found a way to buy out the actual brothers who started this hamburger stand, the McDonald brothers. Okay, I'm using that as a reference point for our fiscal systems and our politics. So politics is sold to you through the Hamburglar, or you deserve a break today. I do deserve a break, right? Or like the Happy Meal giveaways. It's really sad they don't do those anymore because like those things were legit, right? We used to beg our parents. Come on, if you're Gen X, you know what I'm talking about, right? But the economic driver was for McDonald's to hook you into loyalty. And I'm going to tell you right now, till this day, if I ever get fast food, there's one place I get fast food, period. It's not Burger King. It's not Wendy's. It's not it's not Taco Bell. It's not KFC. It's McDonald's. Because I have customer loyalty from my childhood. And like the idea that like, I remember when they announced, McNuggets, like talk about processed chicken, but it didn't matter because it became part of the ethos because the psychology of children. And please, have been a teacher. I've been saying over 25 years. It's actually over 30. I think I don't want to count some of the other years, we get into the psychology of things when we're young. And a lot of the psychology then that is input into our minds is the one track. And when we become adults, typically the only other choice that we conceive of, it's not impossible, but it is very challenging to get out of the duality. And yes, this is directly related to my book, but like it's psychology, is that you follow the path you were raised. That's even biblical. Train a child the way they should go, and they will not deviate from that path. Okay? Scripture, by the way, you don't have to, it doesn't have to always be about God. It actually, tells you how to live. But typically, you usually only do the thing you were raised in or the exact opposite. If you come to a, come to Jesus moment, whatever you want to say, if you come to a moment where you're like, I hate this, I want nothing to do with it, right? You'll do the exact opposite. But the same psychological imprints are there, okay? So, you're like, Becca, what does this have to do with currency, finance, and McDonald's? Well, and politics. So our political systems are set up the same way. They're selling you something. And we have a duality, don't we? Right now we have Republican, Democrat. Red pill, blue pill. There's actually evidence that we always talk, we really need a third-party system. We can't handle a third-party system. The moment a third party comes up within 5 years, it either consumes one of the other two. Hashtag rest in peace, Whig Party, Federalist Party, Anti-Federalist Party. May you rest in peace, Reform Party. And there's a reason why the Green Party is always kind of not there, right? So we want the duality. It's hardwired to get outside, to find the third way. That's why if you're into a lot of East India yoga, Buddhist stuff, but it's also just there's visions of it a lot of places, but the idea of a third eye, it's not owned by those two religious paths or life paths, right? It's everywhere. But the third eye is the idea that you escape the duality, but that's incredibly difficult for people to do. It takes so much self-examination to get out of the duality. So what politicians typically do is they either try to they play on what you already believe, or they give you the fear of the exact opposite of what you believe. And either way it might work, right? Okay? So they're selling you something. That's just plain. Well, so then the question should be, well, what are they selling you? Okay? And the what right now is what I want to talk about, because at the end of the day, for me, the only thing that really it's follow the money. Follow the money, follow the money, follow the money. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Yellow brick. What is a yellow brick? Gold. Gold, the OG. There's a reason why gold is the OG, because our ancient forebears believed that gold was actually the transmuted metal of the sun. That's a different story. But follow the money. There is always, the tale is all this time. I'm always going to break into song. Is the chase for money, because money is energy is power, power is money, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's talk about our monetary systems. I'm not going to get into the candidates. I'm not going to get into any of that stuff. I just want to talk about monetary systems and what's happening globally right now. Okay, so when I was currency trading, the institution where I kind of got trained in, and I was hired because I was smart in math. And I had never done it before, but, I was looking for something new to do. I was an actor and didn't have a lot of money, but I was good at mathematics. And I picked up on this pretty quickly. It was super fun to me. It was super duper duper fun. And if you want to know why I stopped doing it, the only reason why is because I moved to LA to become an actor, not a currency trader. And I kept needing, I needed to find high value clients. And I just, my poor actor friends, I couldn't find enough high value clients for the firm. But I was actually really good at it. He said, the guy who trained me in, we talked about the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, how the IMF will buy whole nations, okay? How they'll buy whole nations with like swooping in and say they're going to help, right? Developing countries. So when you see in the news, like, the real, that's Brazilian currency, the real is fading. The real is falling. Take some developing African nation, right? And they owe the World Monetary Fund, the international, the World Bank, right? The World Bank, they owe them, $15 billion. Okay, what is the World Bank? P.S. You should know that. I'm sorry, you should know that. And I am gonna should you if you're gonna vote. Okay? If you don't plan on voting, then I guess okay. But if you plan on voting, you should know what the International Monetary Fund is, and you should know what the World Bank is. And you should definitely, we're going to talk about it in a second, know what the Federal Reserve is, okay? And the Treasury. But so he said, this was 20 plus years ago. I was pretty young, much younger than I am today, but equally good looking. I was like, it was the first time I'd ever heard about the World Bank, to be honest. I mean, except for casually in like conversations. I've voraciously read the news my entire life. And at this point, I was in my late-ish 20s. I think I was 26, 27. And I didn't realize the impact on the United States. I was still naive enough to believe that we had our own system. We don't. So it was very much drilled into my mind that the International Monetary Fund was a really look like who's behind that, right? Because in America, as we're about to do in a week, we vote on the president, right? But not every system works that way. And I am elected in local government here in Minneapolis, and you get in and you do. There are levels within the city, and in different boards that I sit on, and you're like, okay, where does the buck stop, right? It's like this circular kind of who's in charge. Someone's in charge. Sometimes it's groupthink, but there's always like there's power, right? And if you don't know who the board is. And the International Monetary Fund is like, so let's not get into that right now. But the idea was, planted in me from Currency Exchange, is that doesn't matter whether the dollar rises or falls. We just need the market to move. Okay? So I would trade the dollar against the yen, the British pound. This is actually before the euro. No, the euro had just started, but the pound hadn't joined in, and now they're back out Brexit, right? The Australian dollar, and those were kind of and then Japanese, did I say the Japanese yen? Those were the main markets. The peso was kind of like useless, like don't bother. But every country has their currencies, and they are traded daily one against the other. Okay, it's this inner working matrix of mathematical grids. And, every trader got their, like, I became very good at reading the yen against the dollar. And that was kind of my, like, go-to. Right? I found that to be interesting and could give margins that I liked. But it was all pretty much in developed countries, right? G7 nations. So what does that have to do with right now? Well, if you don't know the history of currency in our nation, I'll give you the fastest overview that I can, and then ask you to consider that when you cast your vote. Okay? The United States was founded. Every state had their own currency because first of all, we started in Great Britain, right? And that's the whole Stamp Act, all those kind of things. And then collectors, my uncle is a historic collector of things, right? collectors have these old currencies. The State Bank of Tennessee, right? Massachusetts Commonwealth Bank. And they would trade against each other. And if you don't know, states actually would have their own time zones and train schedules. We fixed that about 150 years ago. I know a lot of weird things just because I've been a teacher, and I don't know. I just want to know stuff. So then we get to the Civil War, and banks were lending the Union money, and Abraham Lincoln got this idea with his Treasury Secretary of let's actually just issue notes from the Treasury based essentially on the GDP of the people. GDP is gross domestic product. So we can print our own money with our own largesse. And that started for a super short time because then Abraham Lincoln got a bullet in the head. Shortly thereafter, in many ways, the United States ceased being what we think that we know our United States to be. Nobody talks about this in actual history class. But there was an act that put a lot of the power of our banking back into Europe because we had debts from the war. And we had debts from Reconstruction. Yada, yada, yada. I don't know if you remember this little ship called the Titanic. I don't know. I'm just mentioning that because in 1913, the Federal Reserve was born. And around that time, we had another president get shot. Just is what it is. The Federal Reserve is not really a government entity. It's not the Treasury. So when I don't want to get into the Federal Reserve right now. Honestly, that's a slippery slope. The Fed. Suffice to say, we had a gold standard, and then we had a silver standard, meaning that our currency was backed up by silver and gold. And Richard Nixon cut out the gold standard in 1971, before many of us were ever even born. And from that moment on, the dollar basically kind of liquidated. And the inflation that we saw in the 70s, if people were alive then, I was born into that, maybe you're with me on that, came a lot out of that. Reagan tried to put some things back into place. He also had an assassination attempt. Just saying. Attempted on him. Just follow the money. So, because Reagan Nixon, it was supposed to be temporary. So a decade later, it's kind of like the repeal of Obamacare that everybody was talking about, and kind of the way everyone's getting pretty fired up about Roe v. Wade right now. It's like it was supposed to be temporary, and then temporary became permanent, right? That's our monetary standard. There's no standard for the American dollar, okay? There is no standard for the American dollar. That is why when certain government officials print more, right, ideologically, they are intentionally devaluing it. And what happens is, let me give you a real nuts and bolts example of what is happening right now, okay? Right now. There, of course, I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, we burned a lot of our cities. And we never chose to try to take that on. And then there were a lot of union contracts, right? And union wages. So a lot of people in power gave unions their wages that they wanted. Okay? They gave unions the wages they wanted to be able to, teach kids. That's my union, right? Take out the garbage. Writer strike. They're all slightly different things. They're all slightly different issues, right? But in response to that, to this higher wages for people, out of that comes inflation. Why? That was controlled by the government turning up the dial. Like I can fiddle with these knobs right here. Because they printed money. Why are they allowed to print money? Because there is no standard of what money is. When we print money, that is the fastest way to make us poor compared to the rest of the world. Now, the International Monetary Fund. So these phones should not be as cheap as they are. The lithium batteries are not so simple to mine. And literally on the backs of children and other nations, we are propped up. But our money is being made based on our goods as well. And so what is happening right now is the money's churning around, and it's not staying in America. Okay? And what is staying in America is being devalued on purpose. Now, back to the duality, right? And the McDonald's advertisements, right? Burger King, McDonald's, Pepsi, Coke. Okay? Some people are believing the advertisement that to fix this, we need to, go back down to America first, right? Maybe is the slogan, right? And then other people think to fix this, this is not meant to be rude. I do not recall a single policy coming to mind about fixing inflation. I'm not saying the different policies will work, but like one side is talking about like these are the things we're going to do, right? And the other side is forgive me, I genuinely don't know, because I've been so analyzing the markets. So schools, in Minnesota at least, are all underwater, all of them. Even though we had a multi-billion-dollar surplus, air quotes, 2 years ago in the state. The state gave all of that away. From reports in the newspaper, most of it was to schools, and yet all the schools are underwater again. And I would challenge people to say, what happened? Why? Right? So this all comes down to money. And the reason I say it this way is because, of course, I'm a math teacher, and I'm putting YouTube videos online, and I'm putting other things online because I want to help everybody understand this stuff, right, that I've accrued over my lifetime. And mathematics helps you see these things. It helps you understand these systems, and it helps you be set free. Multivariable calculus may not be something you ever use, but the skills you articulate in your mind to comprehend multivariable calculus help you get this. At the end of the day, it's actually quite simple. It's that the dollar does not have a standard against it. So it's just, and that's why, people invest in stocks, people invest in crypto, people invest overseas. This is why the auto industry was bailed out, why the banks were bailed out in 2008. and the housing market crash. And they're actually, inflation is devaluing homes as well, because homes and land and water and trees have intrinsic value, okay? But these ideas, without being backed up, have no value. And that's the American dollar. Our dollar is like our heavyweight champion, and we regularly put our champion against champions of other countries all the time. It's like Game of Thrones. And just because our champion usually wins doesn't mean that they will forever. So I guess that's just to say, please bear that in mind when you cast your vote. Because unlike most nations, we actually get to choose our leader. And we are the biggest nation in the world. So what we do, what we choose to do, matters. Thanks for listening. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I'm trying to help people understand the systems in which we live that none of us chose. We were born into this, right? Like I said, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard before I was ever born. I'm going to guess it was you guys too, So, okay, that's it. Thank you. Please, honestly, please subscribe, share this. My mission in life is to help people understand math. And in that, just do my part to help illuminate the world to all the things that I've learned. I was telling my son yesterday, I'm like, I have a new slogan. Come for the math, stay for the adventure, as we navigate this matrix of the thing called life. You like that? All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you next time. At the end, my mic goes dead. I apologize, but you can follow along with the math. Thank you.